Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
What's up, everybody? It's Sam Payne here, and welcome to the show. Now, today's guest is someone who is helping entrepreneurs all over the world combat something that is very typical with guys that are not only just starting their own businesses or in the early stages of the development of their business, but who have got established companies, guys, who are high-flying CEOs and got a lot on their plates and struggling to deal with everything. This feeling of overwhelm that people talk about, that they can't quite concentrate on what's actually going on, nail everything down and move everything forward in one direction. And do you know what? When you're just starting out, this is such a hard process to concept, because what I should mention our guest at this point, I suppose. We've got Sarah Kaler from Soul Powered, and Sarah's got an incredible story that outlines exactly how this happened to her on such an extreme level. And I won't go into her story now because I don't do it any justice, guys. You've got to let Sarah tell her story because it's just incredible. And I can relate to elements of her story. I mean, man, she put herself through some stress. I'm going to put that out there straight away. I don't know many people that have gone to those dark depths that she went to just to keep her career on path. I mean, and it's not uncommon. That's the scary thing about it, guys. This isn't uncommon. So you really look forward to listening to her story in this. But what she learned from this was how to overcome it. And now she's set up her company, Soul Powered, where she's helping entrepreneurs from all over the world do the same. And like I said at the start, she's helping people who are just starting out in business all the way through to guys who are running multi-million-dollar companies. So not only does Sarah talk about how to overcome this, she talks about how she helps entrepreneurs grow their businesses as a result of overcoming this. So the positives that come from combating this stress go way beyond just feeling better about yourself and feeling happier in yourself. They actually help you drive your business forward so much quicker than you would than if you stayed in this state of overwhelm and panic the whole time, which a lot of people suffer with. I mean, at one point, the way I can relate, guys, at one point in my career when I was in the process, I was 18 months into starting my CrossFit gym and was forced to move because of the council. I've told bits of this story a few times, but it got to the point where, long story short, I won't go on for too long, but the council told us we had to move from one place. Then they wouldn't grant even give us an inkling as to if we were going to get planning permission in the new premises that I'd found with my business partner, Mike. And we had like a 6 to 8 month period where we was left in the dark. And then because the council prolonged that so long, that planning application for so long, it comes to the point where if they didn't approve that application, I would have had to shut my business down because I didn't have enough time to apply for anywhere else. Because I had to get out of the old premises I was in. So I was faced with a really tough situation where all my blood, sweat and tears went into this business. And I mean money. There was about a 60 grand investment at that point into that business. And I would have lost everything, literally everything, if we got a no from that application. And that was a big burden to have on my shoulders. And at one point, guys, I remember I went up to my parents' house to go through the planning application with them. And I was driving back from my parents, back to mine and my wife's house, and I had a panic attack, a full-on episode in the car to the point where I blacked out at the wheel. And my truck, I mean, I got a Mitsubishi pickup truck. It's a big old thing. It swerves sideways in the road, right? And I'm sitting side on in the road, blacked out. And I wake up to traffic bibbing me. And then all of a sudden, I've managed to pull my truck to the side of the road. And I just collapsed, fell out the door and collapsed on the sidewalk. And that, guys, I mean, the only way I can describe it is I literally thought I was going to die. The panic was just there and there was nothing I could do to get over it. And I was rushed into hospital and I was there for quite a few hours, guys, while they brought my energy levels back down to a normal level and brought my heart rate back down to a normal rate. But that was such a scary experience for me. And that for me was a turning point where I thought that this is just too much. This is a bit too much. I've got to deal with this a little bit better. And it didn't stop me from running my business, guys, but it made me realise that I have to deal with this. I can't just let this take over me because I can't function as a person when I'm in that place. So I was really, really excited to get Sarah on the show because she talks about her experience and how she could overcome this. And I learned a hell of a lot from this episode as well, guys. So I hope you enjoy this one. And if you are feeling overwhelmed in your business, guys, if there's a lot going on, if you feel like there's no clear direction or route which you should be taking and you're trying to do everything at once, the Chief Everything Officer, the CEO, we mentioned CEO in the interview, and Sarah named this the Chief Everything Officer, which made me giggle. But it's this do-it-all mentality where we think we've just got nothing but sweat equity and we have to pour everything we have into that business and do everything. If you're there, guys, if you are struggling to comprehend how to deal with the stress that's on your plate right now, this episode is for you. So pin your ears back. Enjoy this one, guys. This is the MyCoda podcast with Sarah Kaler from Soul Powered. What's up, everybody? Sam Payne here, and welcome to the MyCoda podcast. Now, today's guest is Sarah Kaler. Sarah is the founder of Soul Powered. Now, Soul Powered is a leadership and development and coaching company on a mission to generate a movement of conscious, purpose-driven leaders and organisations that improve lives and empower change in the world. Now, guys, I was very excited to get Sarah on the show, and I did reach out to a few of you about this because Sarah is helping so many entrepreneurs combat something that is very common in this world, and that is stress, burning out, and literally redlining life through the startup phase of your company. Now, Sarah has an incredible story and is doing some amazing work with entrepreneurs around the world with a mastermind group, mentorship programs, and one-to-one programs. So, Sarah, how are we doing today?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. I mean, like I said, very excited to speak to you today because you are helping entrepreneurs around the world with so many issues that they are all facing. So, I think everyone's going to get a lot from this one. But before we kick this off, can you just start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, your story, and what it is you do?
Absolutely. So, gosh, I mean, my story, I'll get to that in a minute. Let me start with what I do. So there's a bit of a story there. I definitely, as you mentioned, I help entrepreneurs with a bunch of things, but I mean, to zero in on it, I help them scale up and grow in a way that they avoid burnout, right? They step out of the hustle and instead really focus on high performance, right? So what does it look like to be a leader and think, act, and really perform as a CEO, right? Even as a small business owner, as a perhaps even first-time founder or entrepreneur, and step into that high-performance space and truly lead a body of work or lead a business. And that's a different mentality, and it's a different step of different way to look at taking action, and that turns out to avoid things like burnout, right? And avoid a lot of other sort of mindless action along the way. So that's what I help them do. And in the process, I'm helping people really scale their businesses, and that can look different, but we're definitely growing businesses and growing leaders in the process.
Well, I mean, this is one thing I really liked about what you provide, actually, because I mean, I do have guys in the real early stage of the startup of their business where what you're talking about is actually taking these businesses and showing them how to grow. And one thing that I've found with working with these guys is, and I used to do this myself as well, I used to be terrible for this, is trying to do everything and have like an employee mindset. They've got to do everything within their company. So you touched on a few words. There was scale and grow, high performance, and perform like a CEO. I mean, in your experience, what are these guys that are running their own companies doing so wrong, and how are you helping them overcome these problems?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you just nailed it when you said employee mindset. So many of us step into the world of entrepreneurship in this employee mindset, or we'll call it solopreneur mindset, Right. That's the other one. And I like to call it Chief Everything Officer.
I
So
like that.
it's,
I've never heard
it's
that.
like, it's the do it all mentality. And that can come from that can come from a lot of places, right? For some of you
Mm,
out there, you've worked for a lot of other people or a lot of organizations or companies your whole career, right? So that's all you know really before you've stepped into your own business. For other people, they have this kind of founder syndrome mentality where it's like, I can do it faster, I can do it better. So even if I've hired or outsourced before, I think I'll just have to do it over again anyways. So why
mm,
don't I just do it myself? Right.
mm,
So it can start to show up differently depending on your experience, your background, and what phase you are at in your business. But bottom line is you don't want to get stuck there because it prevents you from growing. It also is going to compound over time and create things like burnout, and I mean the costs to your health, your bottom line, your ability to make an impact. I mean, they're massive, right? So
mm.
you want to shift into what we call CEO mindset, right? Where you're actually understanding that you want to be thinking, acting, and leading in a different capacity where you understand from the outset, the onset of building your business, that you're not going to do everything and you don't want to do
Mm.
everything,
Yeah.
right? And that's tricky at first for a lot of people because they're going, yeah, Sarah, that sounds great and that sounds lovely, but what if I don't have the budget to hire all these people, right? Like the
Yeah.
objections start to come fast and fierce, right? And yet, there's a difference between what we'll talk about in this sort of hustle mentality versus high performance. Because frankly, when you start your business, one, you don't need to be doing everything under the sun. And you really want to be focused on the right things that are moving you forward towards the results that you actually want to get.
Mm.
And then the other thing is you do want to immediately start looking for support in areas that support your weaknesses, right? So where you're not innately strong.
Yeah. Well, do you know, I can completely relate to this because my first business, I've still got the business. It's a CrossFit gym, and
Yeah.
I was I was fresh out of the army. I'd never run a company before in my life, so this for me was a very new experience. And I was doing everything like cleaning, accounts work. I'm not an accountant. I failed maths, and I was doing accounts. It's ridiculous, um, you know. And then this was a common problem. Once I started delving into this, I had a mentor that just stumbled into the gym, and he helped me really outsource everything. And now I don't even coach in the gym. It's pretty much passive. I've got a great team in there, but going back, I mean, one example I can think of, there was a forum on like a CrossFit forum from CrossFit gym owners, and they were all talking about how they clean their floors. And they were talking about all these floor cleaners and these posh machines they use. And on the surface, it looked like a cleaners forum. And there was about 50 comments of people saying they use this, this, and this. And it was only when I jumped in and I couldn't read it anymore. I was like, guys, why are you bothered about how the floor's cleaned? Why aren't you employing someone to clean your floor? And their objections, just like you say, it was no money. They can't afford to do it. That was the biggest objection. I mean, how are you advising guys that have got this objection? How are you getting them to realise that actually they can't not afford to do this?
Yeah. So there's a couple things, right? So at a certain point, I love that. You can't not, right? You can't
Yeah.
not. Number one is look at the value of your time.
Mm,
Okay. So knowing the value of your time is really important as the business owner. And a lot of people don't think that way in the beginning. They're thinking
mm,
about sweat equity, right? They're just thinking about, well, it's got to get done, so I'm going to do it. Who else is going to do it, right? This isn't going to
mm,
fall out of the sky, right? It's not going to just happen, right? So the reality is start with what's the value of my time? Because when you start to understand that, um, this starts to change your mentality and your relationship to other people, because your ability as the business owner is going to start to yield different types of activities and different outcomes, different sets of results, right? You have the power to say, as an example, work on certain types of revenue generating activities that somebody else doesn't have, right? And say, as the CrossFit gym owner, you're going to be able to build certain relationships that somebody you might hire into your business isn't going to be able to generate, right? And if you have more time to generate those relationships or spend on marketing, you're actually going to grow your client list, right? You're going to be able to bring more people in the front doors, right? Which is going to grow your bottom line. And knowing a bit about CrossFit gyms that I do happen to know, I know in that specific industry that's really important, right? It's a high touch business, right? So you need to have those relationships, and you need to have time to be able to build that kind of experience for the people coming in the door. And if you don't, why are people going to want to come, right? So if you're busy cleaning the floor and doing 100 other things, how do you think these people are going to find out about you and come in, right? And so we can use that as an example, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that there's often this also this mentality of how will I find people that want to work for me who I can afford, right? When maybe I'm bootstrapping this together in the beginning, right? I have a small budget, and the reality is, if you can free yourself up to bring in other streams of revenue or more revenue, right? By doing the activities where you're strong, right? You're in your genius and you have more access to that value, and you're opening up that door essentially, and you have more time for that, then you're accelerating the growth of your business, right? Versus keeping a cap on it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're allowing somebody else to come in and help you, and that could be an intern. That could be somebody who wants to work out at your gym for trade, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this could look. This could be somebody who starts on your staff as a cleaner and grows into a manager role. I mean, you never know what can happen when you just start to shift your mindset around who's in your community and who wants to be part of what you're creating.
Absolutely, completely agree. And it's actually interesting. I've just written a blog post actually on how I've outsourced and how affordable it is to outsource a lot of the day-to-day runnings of my online business. And I mean, because a lot of people are setting up online companies now, but even if you aren't, there's still a lot of admin roles involved in offline businesses, and we're in a digital age now. I mean, help has never been more available and so affordable, because you can reach so many demographics in so many different countries. I mean, there's no reason not to outsource, is there?
None.
No.
No reason. And in fact, it's an incredible opportunity to create not only more jobs, but bring people into whatever work you're doing and have people really believe in what you're doing, right? So have people say, wow, I really believe in what you're doing. I want to be a part of this. Right. So there's meaning and there's purpose in it. It's not just a transaction to outsource. Right. So you get people who are motivated to be a part of what you're doing. And that alone creates acceleration in performance and results.
Definitely. So, well, before we carry on, I'd like to actually go back to how you started and the work you're doing with Soul Powered. So, firstly, I mean, I know your story, but the guys who are listening may not know your story. I mean, you started in the corporate world, didn't you? So what changed for you? I mean, what was it that made you change and start your own business?
I'm glad we're circling back. So what my story is really interesting because I'll talk about the corporate piece in a minute. I actually started as an entrepreneur. So my story is
Okay.
interesting because this part actually gets missed a lot. And I bring this up because there was a piece of me that was always entrepreneurial, right? I had this entrepreneur in me at a young age. And my first business, it's funny you were talking about the CrossFit gym, my first business was a yoga studio.
Right. Okay.
So, um, sort of similar model there. I actually got recruited into a company called Lululemon Athletica, for those of you who've heard of it or haven't heard of it. But when it was, now it's an international, multi-billion-dollar company. But when I got recruited in, they were very, very small. And they asked me to help them come into the U.S. market. And they weren't in the U.S. yet. And so I thought, well, I don't know. I don't really work for other people,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
so for me, I was in that entrepreneur mentality, thinking I'm going to work for myself for the rest of my life. And I made the leap because I saw that there was a lot of entrepreneurial-minded people with a big vision to do something really big in the world. And so that really drew me in. And being the driven person that I am, I took the leap, decided to take that risk. And I was there for about 10 years. And I had the incredible opportunity to rise quickly. I got promoted fast. And I found myself in senior leadership roles and, really as a young executive, plowing through some really high growth times with the company. And if you'd interviewed me back then, I would have told you that I absolutely loved my life. And
Yeah.
I did on the surface. So on the surface, here's what was happening. I was at one point running the majority of the US business, right? So upwards of over 300 million in revenue. I was developing thousands of business leaders, and I was on airplanes, almost weekly, right? Flying around the country, opening retail stores, running stores, regions, right? So things were great. Then there was a point where I was in a different role, running training and leadership development and culture for the entire company and the retail organization. So there were big roles and big responsibilities, right? But what was happening behind the curtain in my personal life was slowly but surely my health was falling apart. And it started to happen gradually. So it was a sort of a slow roll, right, where things were compounding because I was putting in, 80-hour work weeks, sometimes more. And at a certain point, I even, get this, had a side coaching business.
Okay.
Right. So, and it wasn't even planned. It sort of just fell into my lap where people were starting to ask for my help outside of work. And I was getting referrals coming my way. And so the overachiever and the driver in me was like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll help. Right. And the
Yep.
entrepreneur in me knew to set up boundaries around that. Right. And say, oh, yeah, this is a business. And so all of these things were happening. And slowly but surely, my health was falling apart. And it started subtle. Right. So first it was, I need to sleep through the weekend in order to have enough energy to wake up Monday morning to do all this all over again, which meant just perform for the week, right? And I got great results. However,
Doesn't sound ideal though.
no, I mean, who wants to sleep through the weekend, right?
Yeah.
That's not a way to live. And yet I had accepted it as normal. Right. So looking back, these things, to me, I thought, oh, I didn't really think much of it at the time because I thought, oh, everyone must be doing this.
Yeah.
Right. In order to just kind of get by because I loved my work so much that small things like that, right? I say small, right? It seemed small. It seemed just sort of like, well, I just need to do the self-care in order to, to get through the week. But here's what started to happen. At a certain point, I started to have grand mal seizures. Okay. So it was like the storm hit, and it went from what started as sleeping through the weekends turned into massive health crisis, right? And I had been an athlete my whole life. I had this yoga studio, right? But I had been a competitive athlete, so I had had a body that had been healthy and with me, and I had never really had issues with my health. So this was it was really shocking when it all started to happen. And of course, my family was really concerned. My husband, was so concerned and scared. And I started to have episodes, right? So there wasn't just one, there was many. And in between episodes, all these specialists, neurologists were trying to figure out what was going on. And they kept saying the levels of stress and exhaustion that you have are becoming out of control, right? And your body is reacting to them, right?
Yeah.
So, it really escalated, and I always say I hit rock bottom after my son was born. So when I was pregnant with my son, they said to me, "You're sort of deemed high risk, right, because of this last few years." I mean, because this actually started to happen over a course of a few years, and when my son was 5 weeks old, I had 6 grand mal seizures in 1 week.
Wow.
And that was it, right?
Yeah.
So for me, at that moment, I said, I cannot live this way anymore, right? And I was continuing to work, run this part-time business, do all this at this level, right? I mean, this is hustle, right? And I was sort of what I'll say a natural hustler. Like, it wasn't hard for me to really go out in the world and work that way. I was wired for it. And yet it was beyond not working, right? I was putting my life on the line. And the two things that I always tell people I knew my whole life was, one, that I wanted to make a big impact in the world. And I didn't always know how, but I knew that I was going to get up to some big things. And I even knew that as a kid, right? Yeah. And the second thing was that I knew that I wanted to have a child. I knew I wanted to be a mother and be a parent. And here I was being carried out on a stretcher out of my house for the second time in a week, and basically spending the whole week in the hospital. And I looked at my husband and I said, we're done. This is not happening any longer. We're changing our lives. And basically from that moment on, it took about a year and a half to completely reinvent our lifestyle and get me out of corporate. I mean, everything from nutrition to exercise to lifestyle to reinventing my business model, everything changed. And I mean, everything has been different since.
Do you know, I mean, it's mad, isn't it? Because at some point you'd think you'd recognise in yourself that something's not quite right here. And I mean, not to the extent that you've gone through, Christ. I mean, you've got some story, but I mean, I've gone through times where I've nearly lost my gym and my other businesses have gone completely wrong, and you're putting in all the time to try and make it work. And I've ended up in hospital with panic attacks and everything. And even when people are saying to you, you need to slow down, you don't even listen. You think, oh, shut up. You don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you get on with your life, I'll get on with mine type thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I think a lot of guys do suffer with this, because people will say to you, and these will be friends, these will be family, you need to slow down, but you just think you don't understand. That's the kind of mentality. I mean, is that kind of how it felt for you?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this, and people think I'm crazy when I tell them this, but this is how I used to be. I have a very vivid memory of lying in a hospital bed, and this was probably around 2009, after having a grand mal seizure episode. And it was the days of the BlackBerry. Do you remember the BlackBerry phones?
I actually had one. It was horrendous.
Okay. So I'm dating myself a little bit here. So I had a BlackBerry at the time, and literally I was waking up from being unconscious. And here I am in the hospital bed, and I'm sort of, even like yelling at my husband a little bit. I mean, not like really yelling, but I was sort of like, nagging him to bring me my BlackBerry.
For your
And
emails.
he's looking, yes, and he's looking at me like, "Are you absolutely mad right now?" Right? And and my family's arriving at the hospital, and they're all like so upset, and I'm in the hospital bed, and you know what I was thinking in my head? I'm thinking, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It is
Mm.
crazy, and it took me years, and it took me several very, very, you know, emotional and bold conversations from my husband
Yeah.
to say, look, I'm terrified that, you're not going to be here anymore because
Yeah.
I mean, horrible things happen, when are falling, you're hitting your head, you're getting injured, things start to happen that are not okay. And it took a baby being born, right?
Yeah.
So it took some very significant things. And, not everyone's story has to look as dramatic or severe as mine, but a lot of people's do, right?
Mm.
And I have met a lot of people who have similar stories. And, whether it's a panic attack or it's a seizure or it's just a high level of stress that people are operating under all the time, that's a chronic state to live in.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's not okay, and we become okay with it because we tell ourselves that it is okay
Mm.
when it's
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah.
Oh no, it's not. And do you know what that story reminds me? Do you watch Friends, or did you watch Friends?
Oh yeah.
Do you
Back
know
in
that
the day.
episode where Phoebe's had the heart attack? She's the high executive. She's
Mhm.
smoking on the hospital bed with heart attacks. It reminds me of that. It reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Even in the hospital, she can't let it go. So, but
Yeah.
well, I mean, you've come through this, and you've obviously made a huge success out of Soul Powered. But one thing I want to know from you, actually, before we get into this, is you've experienced success on many different levels in many different environments. So, what gets you excited now, Sarah? I mean, what does success look like for you now?
Mm. I love this question because the thing that's most exciting for me now is watching people make decisions about what success is going to be for them, right? And
Mm,
and honestly, in a way, take their I would say take their life in their own hands, right? And
mm,
I think about like if I use my own story as an example, and I think about the moment that I recognized that I did not know myself any other way in the
mm,
world and how terrifying that was, right? It
mm.
was like for me, it was so terrifying to think about what was next at a certain point because I thought I don't know how to be any other way.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I had to face that, right? And I see now with my clients, right? I watch them go through that cycle of being at a point of transition or challenge. And I work with successful people, right, who have had a big track record of success in their life. And yet they come to challenge, they come to transition, they come to scaling business, they come to that next point, and they're faced with choices and decisions. And when they decide to take that big leap where it does require looking at themselves and saying, what is it, right, that's really going to be required of me now that
Mm,
wasn't the things that perhaps we always say, what got us here is not going to be the thing that takes us to the next level, right?
mm.
Those are
Yeah,
the moments that get me most excited because it's like, in a way, it's like jumping off a cliff without a parachute, right? That's how it feels. And yet, it requires more courage and audacity and a new relationship to risk. And it
mm,
and it actually creates the boldest uh, leaders, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, there's nothing like being on that path and helping develop leaders through that phase and through those challenges, because those are the ones that most people, when they get to that edge, they want to shy away from it, right? They
Yeah.
don't want to go, they don't want to walk through that because of fear or because they have to face some part of themselves that's not, it's not all that, fun to face, right? Um, frankly. And so, that's where I get most excited to play
Yeah.
at that edge.
Well, I mean, one quote I pulled from one of your videos is profits are driven from people and purpose. And
Mm,
you talk about something that I found very interesting, which was in a world of like marketing and social media, a business success ultimately comes down to people running the business. So, how you talked about being good leaders there, how can people start to develop themselves as more as a business owner or employer or team leader and start managing teams better as opposed to trying to run the business themselves?
Yeah. So this is really important. It comes back to that CEO mindset, right? So when you start to think of yourself as the team leader, there's a couple things here. It's really important is that your job shifts from just getting results through yourself. And now your job is to actually create results through other human beings, right?
Mm.
And those other people are not just transactions, right? This is not just, hey, can you get this thing done for me? It's actually, this is a human being who wants a seat at the table. They want to contribute.
Yeah.
They want this to be meaningful. They actually want to create a result. But they want to have a voice in it, right? And so if you start to look at the bigger picture of what you're doing and give people the opportunity to contribute to it and bring their genius, their strengths, their experience, their skill, right,
Mm.
into your business, right? And you actually hire for that, right? You say, who's the best at this, whatever you're hiring for? And look for people who also have that drive and hunger to contribute to what it is that you're doing, no matter what your business is.
Mm.
If they have that and they're driven by that and they're coachable, you're going to be able to lead a team that creates better results. And you're going to be able to get results by enrolling those people in what is the bigger picture here? What is it that you are creating, whether it's a project, an initiative, a goal for the quarter or the year, right?
Mm.
And when people are on board for that, you actually end up creating more of an impact through people. It's not just up to you anymore, right? You're
Yeah.
actually driving results through others, right? And
Yeah.
it's really, really important to understand that, like, functionally, your role changes. It's not just that you're implementing things to get results. It's actually that you're motivating and inspiring and leading others to create results.
Yeah, I love that. And do you know what? One thing which I tripped up a lot with when I first started sort of employing a lot more people, and even with the online business. I mean, all my online business, everything's overseas workers and everything. So I do a lot of
Hmm.
stuff via Skype and Zoom and Google Drive and Trello and everything else. But
Yep.
that took a long time to develop because a question I kept asking was, or saying to myself was, how do I find good staff? I just cannot find good staff. And actually, what it come down to was me. I wasn't communicating with these people properly, and that took me a long time to learn that. To be able to communicate to someone exactly what it is I wanted from them, but give them the sort of the free rein so they could put their own spin on it and really drive it themselves and make it feel like they own that themselves. That was hard. That was really hard. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have guys that find difficulty with this as well?
100%. And
Mm.
and it sounds exactly as you just described it. Most people say, Sarah, I just can't find good people. Or they say they don't get it. I hear that a lot. They don't
Mm.
get it, and they're really frustrated, and they think they're gearing up to have these feedback conversations, right? But
Hmm.
most of the time, most of the time, it's a symptom of a couple things. Either you've hired the wrong person, or it's you,
Mm. Yep.
right? And this is the hardest
Ouch.
part, right? It's the hardest part, right? Because those things are actually both about you, right? And taking responsibility as a leader to not only hire great talent, right? From the get-go, from point A, right? And to start to see, how do I recognize great talent, and what am I even looking for? And how do I ask great questions in an interview so that
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to get the person I want for the job, right? And then the second part of that is set people up for success, right? Through
Yeah.
what you're talking about, communication. They need to know what's expected of them, and they need to know what success looks like. So you can say all you want, here's what I expect of you, but you also want to paint a really clear picture of what success looks like. Because if you think, a good job looks one way, but they think it looks another way, you've started a project and you're both on a different page.
Yeah.
Right? So
Absolutely.
simple things like that happen every day in companies all over the world, right? And that's really easy for that to happen in a virtual context, right? So in the virtual team world, communication is more important than ever.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one thing I've done actually I never used to do this all the time, but one thing I've done when I was employing people virtually now is I actually spend a couple of days recording myself doing every task I want doing, and then put notes next to the videos, and then give the person who I'm employing an admin pack type thing with tons of resources for them to go through and check out. And then we also have a couple of calls every single week. So I used to do one call, but now it's two calls. And that seems to help as well, because even though they may, I mean, I interviewed Chris Ducker, and he highlighted this to me, that even though these people may be very skilled and capable of what you want them to do, they've never done it with you. They've never done it the way that you want it to be done. So you've always got to show people exactly what you want. Otherwise, you're never going to get what you want from them, right?
100%. Yeah, it's critical that what you're suggesting in terms of weekly check-ins and alignment and expectations are 100% clear. So not only are you setting them up with examples of this is how essentially you're onboarding them, right? You're onboarding them and training them with a system, right? And a process, or this is how we do it here. And then on an ongoing basis, you're saying, on a weekly check-in, how's it going? What support do you need from me? And is it clear? Are we on task? What do you need in order to keep executing and implementing so that we meet these end goals in the way that we set out to do?
Okay, Sarah, so it's been an incredible interview so far. Time has flown by. So before we go, I'd just like to know, have you got any parting words of wisdom for the listeners of the show?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think, after everything we've talked about, I think one of the most important things to focus on, regardless of what stage of business you're at, whether you're early phase and you're starting up or you're getting ready to scale up, is really thinking about the difference between high performance and hustle, right? And I suspect that a lot of you have that instinct and drive and natural hustle out there listening and really thinking about what we've been talking about around high performance. And I think part of the difference is really being able to strategically focus on fewer initiatives or fewer items. I like to call them the big rocks in your business.
Nice.
That actually drive you forward towards the results that you want. And whether you break that down into 90-day goals in a strategic plan, or regardless of your sort of how you map that out in terms of productivity, what's most important is you focus on doing less better, right? And that's ultimately going to make you more productive. You're going to have more focus, more results, and higher performance here, right? Because your team can focus your resources, your energy, and your time on higher quality items that yield more results, right? And you're not going to be spread so thin and all over the place, which gets you into that chief everything officer mentality, right? And And you're going to avoid that state of burnout and that constant hustle mentality.
I love that. That's incredible advice, actually. That's probably one of the best answers I've had from that question. And one quote I am going to take from you from now on, Sarah, is Chief Everything Officer. So thank you for that. That's staying. And doing less better. It's just incredible advice. I think those 3 words sum everything up perfectly. So that is it. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today. That was a great interview. And I know I got a lot from that. And I know the listeners will get a lot from that too. So thank you for your time.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, guys, and there it is. Firstly, apologies for the crackly mic there. I'm not sure what was going on. It's really hard to pick that stuff up in interviews. Okay, really hard. And it's only after you hear it back sometimes that it's happened. And by then it's too late. You can't redo that interview, guys. Okay, so apologies for that. But other than that, guys, I mean, incredible interview. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, guys, I shared my story in that Sarah shared her incredible story. I mean, unreal what she put herself through there just to get higher up in her career on that corporate ladder. And it just goes to show that no matter how successful you are, this can affect you at any time. And also, other really important issues we talked about, guys, was the chief everything officer mentality and trying to do everything yourself. And I am a huge fan of building systems that work for you, okay? Systems that work for you. So you just manage that system. And even if you aren't doing the work yourself, the work is still happening. You're still making money. And you're only going to do that by getting really clear on the process and what it is you want to achieve from each process, employing a killer team, like literally an A team. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Steve Jobs talks about the A team in his not the A team, like an A-star team in his book, not in his book, sorry, in what's his name? I've lost track of who wrote that. 2 seconds. Walter Isaacson, that's it. Walter Isaacson wrote about Steve Jobs. Great book, and I'd thoroughly recommend getting on that, guys. But coming back to where he talks about having an A team of employees working with you. And if you've got a B team, then you're not going to have the results that the A team is going to have. So to find good staff is crucial to really building a successful team. And I've mapped out a whole process on how to do this. I mean, I've put it in a blog post, which you can click on that link below, guys. So I implore you to click on that link and just find out exactly how you can outsource to other people. Another great resource, guys, which is Virtual Freedom by Chris Ducker. Okay, that is also, if you click through to that blog, guys, there's a link to that in that show note, in that blog as well. But more importantly, I mean, let's get in touch with Sarah because she's helping people do this now. Okay, which is just, and the work she's doing is just incredible. Honestly, she's doing such good work with people. So please contact Sarah via the show notes, contact details in the show notes below. And that is it, guys. So I'm going to leave you today from a very cold and snowy Friday afternoon. I hope you're having a fantastic week this week. Okay, this is going to go out on Tuesday, so I hope you've already had a great Monday. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you or speaking to you next time on the MyCoda podcast.